MS Now reporter Jillian Frankel is outside the courthouse in Los Angeles. Also with us, Mike Isaac and Cecilia Kang, who both cover technology for the New York Times. Cecilia is also the co-author of An Ugly Truth: Inside Facebook's Battle for Domination. Highly, highly relevant here. But Jillian, we'll go first to you. This is, of course, a landmark trial for social media. What are parents and advocates telling you about the ways they feel kids have been harmed by these platforms?
Yeah, Ali, what we've been hearing from attorneys and parents alike in this case is that it's less about the content of these apps and more about their specific design features, how they were built. The plaintiff is alleging that they are specifically designed to be addictive. In court, we've been looking at different features like autoplay, like the ability to infinitely scroll, the use of beauty filters, and how those impact kids' and teens' mental health. I spoke with one woman, Juliana Arnold. She's a mom who lost her daughter Coco when Coco was 17 years old. And I do want to be clear here. She is not tied directly to the KGM case in any way, but she holds Instagram responsible for the death of her daughter. And she just explained the stakes of what parents are up against these days and how hard it is, even if you want to control your kids' social media, how hard it is to enforce that. And Zuckerberg is expected to take the stand here in about an hour, Ali.
What is his defense supposed to look like in this case, Jillian?
Yeah, what we heard from Meta already is that they've acknowledged this young woman, KGM's mental health struggles in the past, but they argue that social media wasn't the primary driver there. I want to read you a statement from them. They said, the question for the jury in Los Angeles is whether Instagram was a substantial factor in the plaintiff's mental health struggles. The evidence will show she faced many significant, difficult challenges well before she ever used social media. And Zuckerberg's likely to reiterate that on the stand today. Ali?
Cecilia, we were talking right before we came on the air about the fact that TikTok and Snap have actually settled in this kind of a case. But why hasn't Meta?
So Meta has a bunch of other cases that will have to defend itself in, even if it were to settle this one. So they have a lot riding on this first trial, so they need to fight it out. They also think that they have a strong case. They believe that it's too hard to link social media use to addiction. You just can't say that somebody who uses social media too much has led to mental health harms. And they're going to really home in on that. The idea that you cannot show that the use of technology leads to mental health harms. And they want to fight. They sort of feel like they have a good case against them. And this is Mark Zuckerberg's Meta in an era where he's no longer sort of sitting back and taking punches from Congress or lawmakers. He wants to defend the company.
Yeah, because, of course, Mike, this is not the first time that Zuckerberg has faced questions about the impact of these social media platforms on children. We'll take it back to 2024 when he apologized to families who said their kids were harmed by social media. Look at what he said then.
No one should have to go through the things that your families have suffered. And this is why we invested so much and are going to continue doing industry-leading efforts to make sure that no one has to go through the types of things that your families have had to suffer.
So that's Zuckerberg testifying in front of Congress. Now he's going to be in front of a jury. What are you looking for when he makes that testimony?
Yeah, you know, it's really interesting. By the way, hi, Cecilia. It's nice to be on this panel with you.
Hi, Mike.
But it's really interesting. I think one of the big things that this is going to be singular is that he's facing a jury of his peers, which is really new for him compared to just a few months ago. Last year, he was in front of a judge arguing in an FTC case. And jury trials are very different. You know, people, the average person on the street can, you know, have very differing opinions than, let's say, a judge who's looking very specifically for, you know, did they abide by this specific letter of the law? In that case, against the FTC, Facebook won as far as anti-competitive reasons were concerned. But this is, you know, a very emotional case. It involves children and addiction and the idea that these products, which are highly used by almost, you know, half the world at this point, not just Facebook, but Instagram, WhatsApp. And I think that can get to parents, any parents that might be on the jury's heart in a different way.
Yeah, they are absolutely ubiquitous platforms. And I also think that it's important to note that Jillian made this point. We're talking here about not the content that's on the platform,
right,
but the way that they are designed, which sort of skirts the Section 230 concerns of platforms being held accountable for what's posted on them. That's a free speech argument. This is a different one. And it's why that scientific point of is there a connection between scrolling and algorithms and addiction is going to end up being so important. But I think the point that rides alongside of it, and it dovetails with when you said he's no longer going to take any guff really from Congress, is the ways that Zuckerberg has sought to align himself with Trump at the outset of this second Trump administration, donating money to the inauguration, going to the inauguration, going to Mar-a-Lago in the aftermath of Trump's win. How do the politics factor in, maybe not in a court of law, but in the larger ecosystem that we're operating in?
Certainly. So Meta happens to be one of the biggest budgets, I believe, if not in the top two budgets for lobbying in Washington of any other corporation. So they are going all in terms of lobbying, in terms of campaign donations, and in terms of courting the president directly. This is an individual, Mark Zuckerberg, who had said for years he does not want to be political. He created a platform that he thought was sort of fun. He didn't even think of it as a business for a while. And then he realized as it grew and grew and grew, it had to become more of a business. And then, because it was such a big, important business with many shareholders, it had to engage politically. So he is all in on that. And that means really abiding by the wishes of the president. So he has multiple times gone to the White House. He speaks directly to the president by phone. They talk to each other directly. And but it's also unclear if the president has changed his mind in terms of his view of Mark Zuckerberg and Meta. He holds a lot of resentment towards the company for what he believes was years of censoring him and other conservatives.
Yeah, we have long talked about this idea of cancel culture and the animus toward big tech. I mean, certainly several MAGA crusaders on Capitol Hill love to make that point. Trump, of course, was always one of them. But I also think as we go forward here, Mike, and we see him now on the precipice of this landmark case in a highly political environment, what are your sources telling you about the preparation that's being done behind the scenes? Let's assume that this doesn't end in a settlement. Let's assume that it actually goes through the full duration of the trial and some kind of ruling is made in their favor, out of their favor, whatever it might be. What is the prep going on behind the scenes? Because it's not going to end the conversation about if the platform should be regulated or not.
No, you're 100% right. Like Cecilia was saying, this is a real bellwether moment for the many cases that could follow were Meta to fail in its quest here. I think they're going to really hammer on this idea that correlation does not mean causation. You know, like the idea, and they've been saying this for years. You know, the science behind this is iffy. We haven't found any sort of specific case studies that link addiction to our platforms necessarily, or link mental illness to our platforms specifically. And I think that there are good litigators that are going to be representing the plaintiffs in this case that can probably really just sort of hammer on the emotional stuff that these kids went through. But a lot of the time, Facebook and Meta sort of try to stick to the science here and kind of muddy the waters and, hey, it's not very clear yet, but here are all the sort of safety checks and things we're putting into the platform to try to say that we're being proactive there. I don't know if that's going to be enough, because one of the things that the plaintiffs argue is, look, you still put that onus on children and really their parents to save themselves here, and that's frankly not enough.
Yeah, and again, we're still talking about the algorithm that is designed to keep people on it, scrolling, seeing things that affirm their worldview, and wanting to see more of it. So we'll take it down from 10,000 feet to right back where Jillian is on the ground outside the courthouse. What do we actually expect to see today, in the coming days, weeks? How long is this going to go?
Yeah, well, the witness timeline actually shifted a bit due to the unexpected recess yesterday. A juror was hospitalized. We are expecting to hear from a YouTube executive in the coming days. The trial is expected to last about 6 to 8 weeks, wrapping up sometime around the end of March. Allie?
We will be tracking it as it moves. Jillian Frankel, Cecilia Kang, and Mike Isaac, bringing colleagues together. It's what we do here on MS Now. Thank you all for coming on.